Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Prime Minister Modi lands in Washington, D.C. for his two-day U.S. visit. A bilateral summit with President Trump is scheduled for tomorrow. The Prime Minister is also scheduled to meet top business leaders, including Elon Musk. President Trump is set to sign an executive order imposing reciprocal tariffs on countries that levy higher duties on U.S. imports. The White House press secretary says the order could be signed ahead of the bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Modi. No deal without Ukraine and no peace through weakness, says European leaders after U.S. President Trump and Russian President Putin agreed to begin talks to end the war in Ukraine. The U.S. Defense Secretary claims the push for peace is not a betrayal of Ukraine. The sensex and the Nifty declined for the seventh straight day, the longest losing streak in 3 months. Mid-caps bucked the trend, ending with marginal gains. The rupee remains largely steady against the dollar. For the first time since taking office, RBI Governor Sanjay Manotra meets executives of about 24 NBFCs. Sources say industry sought easier access to liquidity and harmonization of guidelines among financial institutions. Large NBFCs also eye approval to accept deposits. Adani Green Energy withdraws from the proposed $1 billion wind energy project in Sri Lanka. The development comes amidst the Sri Lankan government seeking a renegotiation of the tariffs and activists moving the country's Supreme Court citing environmental concerns. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tables the new Income Tax Act in Parliament. The bill moves to a select committee which is scheduled to submit its report by the first day of the monsoon session of Parliament. Honda and Nissan call off merger talks less than 2 months after announcing. Nissan's board angered by Honda's proposal to make it a subsidiary after initially agreeing to a partnership of equals. Foxconn says it's open to collaborating with Nissan but will not push for an acquisition.
India, firstly, is our most exciting market. Our biggest investments in the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years have been in India.
The global CEO of Truecaller, Jhunjhunwala, says India is the most exciting market for the company. The user base has grown to 300 million and there is no sign of saturation. That's an exclusive.
It is important for US companies to explore India, to get access to the Indian market, but at the same time have a level playing field.
The defense trade has grown tremendously as I've observed it over the years.
To have optionality, it's good for US, good for US economy, good for business, good for long-term relationships.
Right.
But it's also good for pricing for the Indian consumers.
While Trump tariffs trade, tech and now Tesla, Prime Minister Modi's trip to the U.S. is expected to tick off many boxes. The Prime Minister landed in Washington, D.C. for the second leg of his two-nation trip. President Trump will host Prime Minister Modi at the White House, and ahead of that, President Trump is expected to sign off on imposing reciprocal tariffs, doubling down on what has been a constant refrain during his presidential campaign. Trump and Prime Minister Modi will hold bilateral talks at the White House's Oval Office before appearing before the media for a press briefing. Parikshit Luthra in Washington, D.C. reports that a potential civil nuclear energy agreement could also be part of the discussions. We also learned that India could offer the U.S. tariff concessions on electronics, chemicals and medical products. The Prime Minister is also scheduled to meet top business leaders, including Elon Musk. We'll get you more on the Trump-Modi visit and the Musk meeting. But first, the White House press secretary on the possibility of President Trump imposing reciprocal tariffs ahead of the meeting with Prime Minister Modi. Of course, this doesn't have anything to do specifically with India. This is President Trump's ongoing refrain on increasing tariffs. Take a look.
It's very simple logic as to why the president wants to impose reciprocal tariffs. It's the golden rule, which we all learned when we were growing up in school. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And far too many nations around this world have been ripping off the United States of America for far too long. And that's why the president believes this will be a great policy that will benefit American workers and improve our national security.
Parikshit now joining us from Washington, D.C. Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Modi will meet President Trump and, of course, also likely to meet CEOs, including Elon Musk. Take us through what's on the agenda.
CNBC-TV18 was the first channel to report that Elon Musk will be calling on Prime Minister Modi during his visit to Washington, D.C. We reported that on the 5th of February. That news has now been confirmed. Elon Musk is going to call on Prime Minister Modi at the Blair House tomorrow. That will be a crucial meeting because last time around when he was supposed to meet the Indian government, he cancelled the visit and went to China. That was a time when India was offering concessions to Tesla to commit to manufacturing in India and get a duty concession of at least 15%. That somehow did not go down well with the Indian government, but we are told that tomorrow's meeting between Elon Musk and Prime Minister Modi will be a positive one. He's not just the CEO of Tesla now, he's the head of the Department of Government Efficiency. So that assumes a lot of importance. We believe that he is going to seek a tariff reduction on electric cars. He would want an early license for Starlink to start operations, and he'll want a greater collaboration between SpaceX and ISRO as well. So there will be three priorities for Elon Musk in that meeting. Will he commit to manufacturing in India? Definitely not immediately, but he may consider bringing low-cost electric cars to India sometime this year. Tesla has been scouting for showrooms across different locations in India. Hopefully, they will start retail operations, but no immediate commitment on manufacturing is going to be on the cards.
All right, Parikshit, we will, of course, reconnect with you as those meetings take off. But many thanks for joining us. Parikshit has, of course, been speaking with key industry voices in Washington, D.C. to get a sense of what both sides could potentially agree on. Here's what they had to say.
The average tariff India has, even though after bringing it down, is down to 11%, whereas the average tariff of U.S. is around 3%. So there is a gap. And I think there'll be a lot of pressure, especially on the goods which are being exported from the U.S. into India to be brought down. The bigger picture would be I call market access and level playing field. It is important for U.S. companies to explore India, to get access to the Indian market, but at the same time have a level playing field. And I think that's where the pressure points will come in.
I think there will be a lot of synergies in the defense relationship, not only from a defense trade standpoint, but also from the operational standpoint. A lot of military to military exercises, and then indeed a lot of collaboration and initiatives in terms of critical and emerging technology. The defense trade has grown tremendously as I've observed it over the years. And as you know, it stands over $22–23 billion at the moment, and I think that is only poised to grow.
Countries like India, before, who you had to pay a premium for Mideast oil or Mideast natural gas, or deal with other countries that you really had no choice as to who you were going to deal with, right? Well, now the U.S. is available as a partner, right? And I think that generally, to have optionality, it's good for U.S., good for U.S. economy, good for business, good for long-term relationships. Right. But it's also good for pricing for the Indian consumers.
There is a fierce competition globally to be a bigger part of our supply chain. Other countries in Southeast Asia, other countries in this region, this hemisphere, are very much competing to be a bigger part of our supply chain. But I do feel that India is taking some very positive steps that I think will ensure India also plays a bigger role. Trade is super important for us, both going in and out of a country, and reduction of tariffs in India would be very, very helpful to us.
And stay tuned to CNBC-TV18 for the most comprehensive coverage and expert analysis of Prime Minister Modi's trip to the U.S. and his meeting with President Trump. Now, President Trump has said that Russian President Putin has agreed to begin talks to end the war in Ukraine. This after the two leaders had an hour-long phone call that President Trump called, and I quote, friendly. Speaking to reporters, Trump also said that Ukraine is unlikely to regain any land that it has lost during the conflict. However, European foreign ministers have said that a peace deal in Ukraine would require Kyiv's involvement.
We had a Great call.
US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that he had taken calls with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
And I think we're on the way to getting peace. I think President Putin wants peace and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
Trump and the Kremlin confirmed that the two leaders plan to meet in person. Ukraine demands that Russia withdraw from captured territory and wants NATO membership or equivalent security guarantees to prevent future attacks by Moscow. Also on Wednesday, ministers from France, Britain, Germany, Poland, Italy, Spain, and the European Commission met with Ukraine's foreign minister in Paris. In a joint statement, they agreed that Ukraine should be put in a position of strength and that Ukraine and Europe must be part of any negotiations, adding that the European powers were looking forward to discussing the way ahead with their American allies. The statement was released after that meeting was derailed by comments from US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth that Ukraine cannot expect to return to its pre-2014 borders or join NATO. When Trump was asked by a reporter on Wednesday if he sees Ukraine as, quote, an equal member of this peace process, he said it was an interesting question.
I think they have to make peace. Their people are being killed, and I think they have to make peace. I said that was not a good war to go into, and I think they have to make peace. That's what I think.
On Friday, Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are set to hold talks about the Ukraine war on the sidelines of a security conference in Munich. Zelensky said he hopes to meet with U.S. representatives at the conference to finalize security and economic agreements.
And U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has maintained that the U.S. president's push for peace is not a betrayal of Ukraine, adding that a deal would require both Ukraine and Russia to agree to conditions that they may not want to. Take a look.
There is no betrayal there. There is a recognition that the whole world and the United States is invested and interested in peace, a negotiated peace. As President Trump has said, stopping the killing. And so that will require both sides recognizing things they don't want to. That's why I think the world is fortunate to have President Trump. Only he at this moment could convene the powers that be to bring peace, and that's a welcome sign.
Well, let's now talk about our markets and how they closed. The Sensex and the Nifty ending in the red for the 7th straight session, the longest losing streak that we've seen in the last 3 months. But the losses today marginal. The Sensex and the Nifty began the day with gains of about 1%, but then finally closing lower. Flat close there for both the Sensex and the Nifty. The mid-cap index just about closing in positive territory. In the money market, the rupee remained largely steady against the dollar. The Indian currency remains below the 87 mark after the RBI's intervention earlier this week. The 10-year bond prices and yields were also largely stable in trade today. So that's the dollar rupee for you. 86.89 is where it closed for the day. We'll head into a break, but up next, for the first time since taking office, RBI Governor Sanjay Malhotra meets executives of about 24 NBFCs. That and more when we return. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has tabled the new Income Tax Act in Parliament. The bill will move to a select committee, which is scheduled to submit its report by the first day of the monsoon session of Parliament. Meanwhile, ruckus in Parliament today over the Waqf Bill. A report of the Joint Parliamentary Committee was tabled in the Rajya Sabha. Opposition leader Mallikarjun Kharge said the report does not contain the dissent notes filed by opposition members. Kharge called the JPC report anti-democratic and urged the Rajya Sabha chairman to reject it. This led to a war of words and the opposition staging a walkout. For the first time since taking office, RBI Governor Sanjay Malhotra held a meeting with the executives of about 24 NBFCs. Sources say that industry sought easier access to liquidity and harmonization of guidelines among financial institutions. Ritu joins us now with more. Ritu, take us through what the NBFCs had to say in terms of demands.
Well, thanks for that. The Reserve Bank of India governor, deputy governors and the top brass at the RBI today held a meeting with large select NBFCs along with other industry representatives. We've been given to understand that about 20 to 25 large NBFCs, primarily in the upper layer, were part of today's meeting, including the likes of Shriram Finance, Bajaj Finance, Mahindra Finance, Chola Mandalam, PFC, REC, among others. Apart from them, there were industry bodies like MFIN, Sadhan and FIDC that also participated in the meeting. Now remember, this is the very first time that Governor Sanjay Malhotra held a meeting with the NBFC industry representatives, and this is in line with RBI's policy of having a consultative approach. Largely, it was to seek feedback from these industry bodies on various issues that impact NBFCs, and the NBFCs on their part reiterated their demand for a refinance window, for instance, for NBFCs. On top of mind was the liquidity constraints and what can be done to resolve for that, for harmonization of guidelines between various entities. And we've also been given to understand that some of the large NBFCs reiterated their demand of being allowed to accept public deposits. Now, besides this, the likes of Sadhan and MFIN also brought up the recent issue of Karnataka government imposing stricter conditions for MFI collections, and that is something RBI said it was looking into. So the idea was to seek feedback. There will be more such meetings, of course, that the RBI will be holding with other players in the coming future.
All right, many thanks for joining us. Now, SEBI has issued a consultation paper proposing changes that would allow investment advisors and research analysts to charge advance fee for up to a year. Currently, investment advisors are allowed to charge advance fee for up to 2 quarters, while research analysts can charge only for a quarter. Yash is standing by to explain the implications. Yash.
Well, this is a very interesting consultation paper which has been issued by market regulator SEBI, essentially, allowing research analysts and investment advisors to charge their clients advance fee for a longer period of time. What is the period which SEBI suggested? The period, according to SEBI, can be up to 1 year, which is about 4 quarters. Currently, investment advisors can only charge advance fees for about 2 quarters, and research analysts can charge this advance fee for about 1 quarter. This move from SEBI, in terms of the consultation paper which has been released, comes after the research analyst community had made representations to market regulator SEBI that it gets very difficult for them to sort of give long-term advice, investment planning to their clients in absence of a long-term fees. SEBI, acknowledging that, has issued this consultation paper, allowing these research analysts and investment advisors to be able to receive a long-term fees from their clients. The last date as far as submission of stakeholder views to this consultation paper is concerned is February 27th.
All right, Yash, many thanks for joining us. Adani Green Energy has announced it will withdraw from the wind energy and transmission projects in Sri Lanka. The development comes amidst the Sri Lankan government seeking a renegotiation of tariffs and activists moving the country's Supreme Court citing environmental concerns. In a statement, Adani has said that it remains committed to Sri Lanka and will be open to future collaborations. Remember, the projects were approved by the previous Sri Lankan administration and were estimated to see an investment of $1 billion. On to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. The global CEO of Truecaller, Rishad Jhunjhunwala, says India is the most exciting market for the company. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Jhunjhunwala said the firm is using artificial intelligence to tackle AI-led scams. Take a look.
We are actually using AI to tackle AI. It has to be like that. We've actually used a lot of AI for a very long time now. We always had models where we could detect that this number is likely to be a spammer or this message sender is likely to be a spammer. Those were some of the basics that we did a long time ago. We're now looking at AI almost across the business, not only protecting consumers and improving consumers' communication, but also from a business point of view, from our biggest revenue stream is advertising. How can we help brands leverage AI on our platform and get better bang for their buck? We've invested very heavily on various parts of our business, even operationally. We're using AI on customer support, for example. Even our legal team is looking at AI products. Our developers looking at AI products. So AI is very deep into our business now, and pretty significant investments are being made into AI.
Let's double down on India and your focus here on India. How do you see this market evolving? How do you see this market growing for you? What are the opportunities that you want to build on, considering the fact that the lion's share of your revenue comes from the market? I mean, do you believe you've hit saturation here in India?
So India, firstly, is our most exciting market. I think globally, for a lot of companies globally, India is the most exciting market, right? It is for us as well. Our biggest investments in the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years have been in India. We actually have more engineers in India than we have in our head office in Stockholm now. We build in India and we ship globally. A very large chunk of our product is shipped globally out of India as well. India continues to grow very, very rapidly. The entire stack that is available to an Indian citizen now to conduct business digitally has made the mobile phone number even more important than it used to be. And that's where we believe our relevance continues to grow in India. We haven't reached saturation at all. We are fortunate to have a large user base in India. I think we crossed 350 million users in India, but we still have a huge space.
Well, that's Truecaller on their plans for India. Now, US investor Adani Gaikwad is likely to have missed the deadline set by the Supreme Court to mount a bid for Religare. Gaikwad was proposing to challenge the bid by the Burman family to take control of the company. Ashmit standing by with more details. Ashmit, the 2 p.m. deadline has passed. Has Gaikwad been able to deposit the earnest money or not?
Well, what sources are telling us is that he struggled to put through. He's not really complied with that deadline. That money has not been coming. So that no, the answer to that question is no. He's not met with that 2 p.m. deadline that the Supreme Court had served upon him. Again, this calls into focus the Burman open offer. Of course, the conversations regarding the open offer by the Burmans began way back in September of 2023. They had proposed 235 rupees a share. Since then, there have been a number of questions raised, especially more recently by Adani Gaikwad, who said, why 235? I'm willing to offer 275. And with that offer, in fact, he moved not just SEBI, but also the Apex Court, which led to a few questions. But essentially, the Supreme Court had said that, look, for any conversation going forward, for SEBI to consider you seriously, you need to show your bona fides. You need to make that deposit, earnest money deposit of 600 crore rupees. For that, there was a deadline given of yesterday, extended by 1 day till today at 2 p.m. 13th of Feb is when the deadline had expired. We're given to understand the funds have not come. So therefore, the Supreme Court had provided that in case of a failure to meet this deadline, the Burman open offer can close. So finally, that will close the books as far as this 18-month-long conversation is concerned. And as to how the Burman open offer has done, well, the total book size was about 9 crore shares. Now, the latest publicly available information on the BSE suggests that about 2.3 lakh shares have only been tendered so far. So the open offer haven't done quite well. But nonetheless, we're still awaiting clarity from the market regulator, from Religare, as well as from the Burmans as to what the road ahead looks like for now.
All right, Ashmit, appreciate you joining us. That's the latest in the Religare battle. Well, the ratings are in for Budget Day, and as always, CNBC-TV18 is #1, the clear leader with almost 92% viewership during the Finance Minister's speech. In fact, if you look at the viewership over the course of the day, 88%. Unparalleled dominance continuing for the last 25 years. We would like to thank all of our viewers for your continued support and trust in us. Remember, we have promised to be, CNBC TV18 has promised to be India's budget headquarters, and we've delivered on that promise year after year. So once again, many thanks to our viewers for tuning in.